The crying man on the sidewalk looked like trouble. People in downtown Chicago hurried past him, pretending not to notice. His black leather jacket was dusty, his jeans torn, and his motorcycle helmet rested beside him on the cold concrete. He sat hunched over, shoulders shaking, quietly sobbing. A young woman walking her dog slowed down for a second, then quickly crossed the street. Probably drunk," she muttered. A businessman exiting a nearby office building glanced at the man and shook his head. "Another biker causing problems," he said under his breath. No one stopped. No one stopped. No one asked. No one cared. But what they didn't know was that the man crying on the sidewalk was about to change all their lives. The biker's name was Daniel Carter, a 38-year-old mechanic who had spent most of his life fixing other people's vehicles. That morning had started like any other. Daniel had ridden his old Harley through the busy streets of Chicago, heading to the hospital to visit someone very important. His 7-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily had been fighting a serious heart condition for months. Today was supposed to be the day she finally came home. Daniel had saved every dollar he could to pay for her treatment. He worked late nights, skipped meals, and sold most of his belongings. The only thing he refused to sell was his motorcycle, because it was the last gift his late wife had given him. But as Daniel reached the hospital parking lot, everything went wrong. A luxury SUV suddenly swerved into his lane. Daniel slammed the brakes, losing control. His motorcycle skidded across the pavement, throwing him hard onto the ground. The driver stepped out of the SUV, a well-dressed man in an expensive suit. Instead of helping, he looked down at Daniel with disgust. "Watch where you're going," the man snapped. Daniel groaned, struggling to stand. "On my bike. You hit my bike," he said weakly. The man rolled his eyes. "You bikers are all the same, reckless and careless." Then, without another word, he got back into his SUV and drove away, leaving Daniel alone on the ground. Daniel's hands trembled as he picked up his helmet. His motorcycle lay on its side, badly damaged. The front wheel was bent and oil leaked onto the pavement. He tried to lift the bike, but pain shot through his shoulder. He collapsed to his knees. People walked around him, stepping carefully to avoid the spilled oil. A group of teenagers laughed quietly. "Oh, look at that guy," one of them whispered. "He can't even stand." Daniel felt tears well up in his eyes, not because of the pain, not because of the damaged motorcycle, but because he realized something terrifying. He might not make it to the hospital in time to see his daughter. And if the doctors discharged her without him there, she would have no one to take her home. That thought broke him. Daniel sat down on the curb, buried his face in his hands, and started crying. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Cars drove by. Pedestrians hurried along the sidewalk. A police officer across the street glanced in Daniel's direction but didn't move. The city kept moving, as if the crying man didn't exist. A delivery driver walked past and shook his head. "I shouldn't ride if you can't handle it," he said. An elderly couple slowed down, watching Daniel with concern, but they kept walking. Everyone assumed the same thing. He was just another biker causing trouble. Daniel wiped his tears and tried to stand again, but his injured shoulder gave out. He fell back onto the pavement. Pain shot through his body, and his vision blurred. For a moment, he thought he might pass out. That's when he heard footsteps approaching. A small voice spoke behind him. "Sir, are you okay?" Daniel looked up. Standing in front of him was a young boy, no older than 10 years old, holding a backpack. The boy's mother stood a few steps behind, watching nervously. Daniel forced a weak smile. "I'm fine, kid," he said. "Just had a little accident." The boy frowned. "You're crying," he said. Daniel hesitated. Then he whispered the truth. "My daughter is waiting for me at the hospital," he said. "She's supposed to come home today, and I don't think I can get there." The boy's eyes widened. He turned to his mother. "Mom, we have to help him," he said. The woman looked uncertain, but before she could respond, a distant sound filled the air. Sirens, loud, urgent, getting closer. Everyone on the street turned to look. Within seconds, 2 police cars and an ambulance raced around the corner and stopped directly in front of Daniel. Whoa. People stepped back in surprise. The officers jumped out of their vehicles and rushed toward him. "Sir, are you Daniel Carter?" one of them asked. Daniel blinked in confusion. "Yes, that's me." The officer's expression softened. "We've been looking for you," he said. A murmur spread through the crowd. "Looking for him? Why? The ambulance doors opened and a paramedic hurried over. Your daughter is stable, she said gently. But the hospital needs you there immediately. Daniel's heart pounded. She's okay? He asked. The paramedic nodded. Yes. And we're here to take Yahir. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the paramedics carefully helped Daniel onto a stretcher. One of the police officers walked over to the damaged motorcycle and inspected it. Then he turned to the people standing nearby. Do you know who this man is? He asked loudly. No one answered. The officer took a deep breath. This man, he said, pointing to Daniel, he donated blood 3 times last month to help save children at the city hospital. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer continued. He also spends his weekends repairing motorcycles for free so low-income workers can get to their jobs. The teenagers who had laughed earlier lowered their heads. The businessman who had ignored him looked ashamed. The delivery driver stared at the ground. Everyone suddenly realized the truth. The man they had judged was a hero. As the paramedics prepared to close the ambulance doors, the young boy stepped forward. Sir, he said, raising his hand. Daniel looked at him. The boy gave a small salute. I hope your daughter gets better, he said. Daniel's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Thank you, he whispered. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, people in the crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then louder. Within seconds, the entire street filled with applause. The same people who had ignored him just minutes earlier were now cheering for him, respecting him, recognizing him. Daniel placed his hand over his heart as the ambulance doors closed. The sirens started again. And as the vehicle drove toward the hospital, the crowd stood silently, watching it disappear down the street. Because sometimes, the person the world ignores today is the hero it will honor tomorrow.